It's been a bit of time since I've watched Keira Knightley in a new production, but I'm genuinely a fan of her, so automatically her name is attractive, as well as many of the casting attributions here, and maybe I'm leaving some out, but I'm judging based on who I know and familiarity. A lot of big names. John Lindstrom, Chris Cooper, Roy Cochrane, Alessandro Nivola. He's been in a lot of new projects lately. Carrie Coon, David Dastmalchian. I love watching him. This sounds quite attractive there, and though I'm not necessarily familiar with Matt Ruskin in terms of his filmography, other than in name, I know I've heard him in passing from somewhere, but none of his film projects stood out to me in terms of projects I personally witnessed or even really heard of before. He's serving as writer and director here, and this is another 20th Century Studios project that, like all the others, is getting debuted on Hulu. So it seems Hulu is the streaming platform for all the Fox content. I don't know if that's sort of what Disney's thinking, but not all of these are getting theatrical debuts. I think rarely any of them are. Some of the bigger projects in name and IP level, perhaps, are getting that regard, but most of these go on to a streaming debut. So Boston Strangler could be pretty interesting. I did do a general read-up on the story because I'm going in otherwise completely blind. And it is quite interesting. It's very much a mysterious depiction of a real-life tragedy in part from where several people got murdered. And there's still some mysterious components to that story that we're wrestling with in consideration today, at least from what I read. Some unanswered questions. But it could be quite an interesting picture, I think. If you needed a good baseline, this is what IMDb presents. And it seems like a very faithful adaptation of the story in that this is very much an inspired work. Loretta McLaughlin was the reporter who first connected the murder and broke the story of the Boston Strangler. She and Jean Cole challenged the sexism of the early 1960s to report on the city's most notorious serial killer. So this is taking on a particularly... what's what I'm looking for? Singular focus I find quite interesting. They could give the story a lot more depth rather than just, another biographical depiction of a murder story. And we've had plenty of those that might have done well as, in regards to delivery. I mean, I can think of Dahmer recently, though whether or not you're able to stomach that project, I'm sure many of us could regard it as a successful work in audience viewership for Netflix. True crime stories and adaptations of real-life horror tragedies do attract an audience. Maybe it's just that learning opportunity, right? This could be the same story with Boston Strangler. That's a good general pitch to go in with the story, especially if you're somebody that's unfamiliarized to it. Let's take a look at the depiction itself. I'm quite curious. I mean, again, on just first look, I'm entertained. Let's see if the project pulls us in as well. I would imagine, like 20th Century Pictures projects are usually pretty attractive on quality. Usually.
The city is for some glamorous, stimulating, prosperous. Only recently has it become dangerous.
Like I was saying, I think the journalism route is quite interesting to go down.
Over the last 2 weeks.
You're on the lifestyle desk. You're not covering a homicide.
I think the murders are connected.
Especially when you're dealing with real life
just came over the wire.
I'm killing the follow-up.
Topics.
You don't have a story.
How many
such as
women have to
workplace
die before
equality and
it's a
things like
story?
that. Again, like I said, a unique focus here
Number 4.
that puts it into a certain direction
Police
that feels like a
aren't
departure
Never seen
from
him
the
this
true
tight-lipped
crime
about
story.
I don't care if it's 1 killer or 4. We're gonna catch whoever did this.
You have the suspect. Boston police, hands on the wall.
We had him. We just let him walk away.
Everything lines up with him. His history, the progression of the crimes, everything.
You know how many people I've gone down the rabbit hole with? It's a dead end every time with this case.
What do you think you're gonna find out there? When is this gonna stop, Loretta?
I need you to call in a favor.
Be quick. I don't want to get fired tonight.
Any lawyer worth a dime would pick this apart.
Good so far.
You really want to use this paper to tear down the police department?
If anyone else was blowing it this badly, we'd have put it on the front page a long time ago.
I need you to take down an address. If I don't call back in an hour, give it to the police.
Loretta, there's more than one lunatic out there, and you're gonna get us both killed.
A safe little world is just delusion.
It looks good. I don't know necessarily, because part of me is like, this could go for awards. I don't know. Some of the streaming projects lately have, but on the Fox lines, maybe. I could see potential there. It comes across me like a very serious picture and depiction, like a lot of biographical pictures happen to be. So there's a familiarity going in on a baseline, like I was saying, with other stories like Dahmer. People are very familiarized with the format of this genre and the type of stories you're going to get produced. But I find the specific angle of the journalism scene, especially revolving around, I believe, Keira Knightley's character, perhaps some of the other ones as well. I think there is some interaction as well with Carrie Coon in that respect. This is a story that, to me, has a strength to it that is particularly realistic, that gives it... here's a question as well, in terms of faithfulness. Sometimes these inspired by true story works, as good as they might be, they exercise some liberty. No translation is perfect, right? Whether you're speaking of perhaps a adaptation from a different means of artistic expression to the cinema realm or TV streaming, whatever you want to say in the Hollywood space. There are sometimes necessary liberties taken for story structure merits and certain provisions. Other times there's other sentiments going in that guide those changes. Reading the story was more so an account on the circumstances surrounding the murder and the tragedies of the situation and what it's depicting. I didn't see as much at the time, and maybe this was true, which is why I'm giving some leeway here, to Loretta's story and those surrounding her, dealing with the real concerns of the time surrounding, as they say, I could see the pitch maybe warding people off because they look at this and think maybe there's a bit of a modernistic twist to it, and it says that these two characters, that Keira Knightley and I believe Carrie Coon are playing, yes, that they're challenging, to pull a quote, they're challenging the sexism of the time. Because it feels so relevant to where we are today, and because the conversation surrounding equality has gotten a bit, whatever camp you're in on it, I'm not necessarily trying to opine on a perspective here. Generally speaking, in the realm of cinema, that type of topic tends to perhaps deter first engagement on suspicion. And it might be, a travesty of justice, really, that such stories are being treated with an amount of skepticism, but that's just the circumstances of the times we live in. Because certain other media adaptations, I would say, are not necessarily as serious as this one, but have put that particular line of storytelling and real-world inspiration in an inaccessible field. But again, I'll give it some leeway here. This story could be quite good on that, and it can be quite attractive as a learning opportunity to see a window of time, in the 60s in history, that there were perhaps inadequacies, inequality between the sexes in the workplace, especially in the journalism scene. I could easily understand a statement of that, and it could be depicted quite well. I'm just saying, in terms of gauging a general audience, you might have people that are warded off through no fault of Boston Strangler, through other associated works that, again, have depicted the same type of social commentary in inferior ways. But I see a sophistication here that, again, puts this project mentioning those particular standpoints with the journalism side and the workplace equality side. It puts it in a particular space that, for me, feels very singular and specific, apart from other true crime stories as of late. And each story, perhaps has its own field of uniqueness, but this feels like it's pushing for something more. Like it's a level up. I'm curious to see the reception to it. I'm curious as well to see the debut, how accessible it is as a project. It's on Hulu. It's not that hard to maybe go to a theater. You can just watch it right at home. I'm saying in the case if it were alternative released in theaters, it's a much more convenient accessibility, I would imagine, for a lot of people. Granted, post a subscription price to access Hulu in your account, but at the same time, it's a rather convenient watch. And I think with the talent boasted and a competent delivery, it could be quite attractive. Let me know your thoughts down below on the Boston Strangler, if you so wish to disclose your perspective. I think a lot of names will attract people, and I think perhaps the uniqueness of the story, maybe the inspirational account. We'll have to see how faithful it is again. That's a question for when the film fully debuts. We'll get a better window on that. But especially if you're familiarized with the story already. What I'm seeing here looks good. And I'm genuinely curious to watch the story for myself in full. I think it'll be a good debut. in my opinion. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.